fact that you can produce such great sound, has that ever been, and but you're, at the same time, it's like you have this force within you, but like you were a young girl trying to make your way through the industry, trying to write your own stuff, obviously a very difficult thing to do, yet at the same time you have this great power. Was there ever any kind of...
Well, I think in the very, very beginning, like I saw this thing I did the other day for the NBA playoffs, the first time I was ever on TV, and I sang America the Beautiful, and at the end I go like, the shiny sea, real high note that I can't do right now because I've had no sleep, but I went for it, and I went for it more than I go for it on live TV these days, because you can't control it. Now people know me, but then I was like, hey, no one knows who I am, and I felt like I was rooting for myself, like watching it, like, wow, like I'm proud of her, like she just really went for this thing, you know what I mean? I was going for it. I was trying to establish myself as a singer.
You know, for the longest time you weren't known for singing live, you weren't even known for doing that many live television appearances. But I think with the Butterfly album, it's like every time you turn on the TV, you know, you're there singing, and you were really going for it. And obviously, times your voice, in terms of just the sheer vocals, was stronger than others, as things will fluctuate. Right. But you always stood there and really just stayed there and tried to sell the song. Right. And do you think that kind of doing all those live dates and sort of dealing with your voice when it's not technically perfect, do you think that's helped you as a singer?
I haven't done that many. And the other thing is, when you're dealing with, first of all, my instrument is it's not standard. Even like, let's say there's a girl who's a great belter, and she can belt and do all things in a high register and has even a deep register. The whisper register of my voice, like that I use on Bliss, is something that is so fragile and unique and bizarre. Like sometimes, if I have a cold and I have no voice whatsoever, I can do high notes and do anything in that register, but speak not at all. Okay. Sometimes when my airy voice is real clear, like I was explaining to Joe tonight, like I can't do tonight, that's not as good.
I did a feature on Kelly Price, and she called you the Queen of Air. She was saying, but in a nice way. No. But she's saying you taught her how to sing, I guess, in a breathy way.
Yeah,
that's like your trademark. Where did that come? How did you develop that?
Actually, that came about, and I have to call someone else the Queen of Air, which is Cindy Mizell, who is one of the best backup singers in the business, and a great lead singer as well.
I've had enough.
Yeah.
This could be the night.
Yeah, and when I was a little, like, 17-year-old girl walking around with barely any shoes, like my shoe, like, she heard my stomach growling in a session. Like, we were doing a session for T.M. Stevens in, like, I don't know, 1988 or something, and I was, like, literally, like, this little kid, and she's looking at me like, what are you doing here, A? You know, B, like, how did you get to this session? And, like, singing with the top backups. She was already the top backup singer, and she still looks like a baby, and she's beautiful, and she's still amazing. But I was just, like, so honored to be singing with her that I was really, like, in awe, because I had heard about her and stuff. And I loved a lot of her records that she had, not her records, but songs she had sung like in the 80s. All the records we're talking about
dance records
had a lot of those, like, da, 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 like those airy background parts. And so that's where, like, I emulated a lot of things, probably a lot of the Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis records, probably a lot of Kashif, you know, a lot of that stuff. And Cindy sang on, you know, so many records.
A lot of those freestyle records and stuff. She sang a lot of that stuff with Arthur Baker.
Yeah, a lot of the Arthur Baker stuff. So, you know, growing up with those things in my ear. And then I was singing with her. And so I think that singing with her, and just like, I was very awed by her when I first met her, because she's this beautiful girl with this beautiful voice and this beautiful airy voice, and I always had that. Like, I think I might have more air in my voice, which is why I can lose my voice quicker, because a lot of it is harmonics. Like right now that I'm tired, like if I sing, yeah, you'll hear there's like a lot of there's a lot of different, like, that's why I can do that high thing. Because it's almost where my voice would go into a rasp, but instead it becomes this solid high tone. So,
do you think that's where you got your real?
It's like hard to explain, like somewhere within there. Yeah.
I mean, I think one thing that was, again, I told you like how I kind of became very interested in your music. I think part of that also was your focus on backing vocals. Yeah. Because that's what I've always loved about Luther. Yeah. And I think one of my favorite records of yours was the Christmas album, because the backing vocals on those were just so powerful. You know, why did you decide to, and that's not really a pop music thing at the time, to have such prominent
Right.
backing vocals. Why was that important to you?
Well, even if you go back to Vision of Love and you listen to Vision of Love, which I have my criticisms with that record, the demo was better than the record. The demo was done in my little studio that the guy that I was signed to, he was a producer, I was signed to him. I ended up giving away a lot of money to him, but and royalties for years. But he had this little studio, and I did Vision of Love in there, and I sang on a PZM drum mic, which is like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but it's a black drum mic that's like $25, and it's made for a flat to put on a drum, right? But that's all we had.
Right.
So it picked up a lot of the harmonics in my voice. So when I was doing those on those background parts, it really picked up the air. So when I went to do the record, I couldn't recreate those backgrounds as well as they were on that little crappy studio. So we ended up using a lot of that. Even the high note is from that PZM drum mic. Like, I might just for experimentation go and try and sing into one of those little mics again and see what it sounds like, because it actually it picked up certain qualities. And then also when I was I have a problem with certain mics because I have such diversity in range. Like, I can belt, but the air is also not picked up as well by certain mics. It's hard to explain. It's like, and I've gone to my throat doctor, and he's shown me where it is in my voice that the high register comes from, where it is that, like, why I have a naturally rich voice when I'm speaking to you, and why that translates into me having this high register.
Well, I mean, vocally on this album, I think you seem very, you know, like, I've seen you in interviews and stuff, and it seemed like for a while you deliberately stayed away from the high notes. But even not just the high notes, but just from the criticism that, you know, I think people used to always say you did vocal gymnastics, or whatever that meant. But on this album, you know, and I've only heard it, I just got it yesterday, but it just seems like you're just belting stuff out, and that you're not afraid of the high stuff, you're not afraid of just going for it. Am I just making it? Or
No, that's a valid point and comment. I mean, there are some songs where I'm barely sing. I'm not doing that, like Petals and Ex-Girlfriend. I barely sing.
But like a Mariah's theme, I mean, at the end of that record, you're just, you know.
Well, I felt very passionate about that particular song. That's another one I did all the backgrounds myself, and I was very kind of isolated in the studio, and I lived with it for a while. I started it in LA. I went to Capri. I lived with it back and forth, and at the end of it, I just felt like really it needed that kind of release. You know what I mean? And I was told to restrain myself a lot, like back in the day. Like, not on every song, but I think people preferred me to sing this straight and do this like this, and don't do the high notes because, like, critics are ragging on you for doing too many of the high notes. And I know that, but I also know that was a different time. That was like 6 years ago or 7 years, and it's like, look, that's a part of my voice that I'm proud of. That's something that I have that's unique, and it's something that I was very influenced, obviously, by Minnie Riperton, you know, and Lisa Fisher is another one who's an amazing, like, she's incredible. She has such control over that range, and she's someone who I would have loved to see become a big star in her own right. She's also a beautiful person from when I've met her. She and Cindy have done, you know, sang for Luther for years. But and she was very generous when she met me, and very, like, warm, and, you know, there's a lot of people who could have been raggy, you know what I mean? There's a lot of people who could have had that, like, hey, you know, I've been doing this for years, blah, 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 blah. She was not like that.
Do you think there's any, I mean, I think it's interesting that, you know, you said you were told to restrain your voice in the studio, but then it seems like you were also kind of told to hold back and to restrain yourself in other ways, too. Does that strike you as kind of ironic? Or?
It's quite parallel, yes. I mean, but Weezy lived through it all. But, yeah, I mean, I feel like getting back to the live performance on TV stuff, that's not an easy thing to do. It's much harder than singing in my own concert live. Because when you're on TV, there are the variables of this is why my instrument is very sensitive. The smoke they use to pick up the lights, there has to be smoke. So it's either oil-based, chemical-based, whatever, and I am totally affected by, like, someone had a cigarette in the other room. I already feel it. Like,
but do you think that sometimes, I mean, because, you know, a lot of the greatest singers, American pop singers, have in some ways become better song stylists as they've started to lose some of their, you know, some of their just natural range. I mean, by being able to sell a song without just kind of hitting the notes and everything, but really bringing it home emotionally, that's actually helped their lyricism in some ways.
I think,
you know, you think about great, like maybe like a Billie Holiday, or even like an Aretha Franklin. I mean, everybody has gone through. I think Whitney's a better singer now than she ever was, even though she doesn't have that kind of voice that she had on the first album or something. You know?
I think that on this album, it's the closest to how my voice was on the first album in terms of range.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if you agree, except that I have more deep tones at this point. I mean, if you hear like the Mariah's theme and Bliss and Against All Odds, I mean, there was a clarity.
You're gonna get in trouble for that one too.
Yeah, they're gonna rag on me for that. Why? Because it's pop, or because
you've read all your reviews?
Because they think it's too showy. Like,
I'm not saying that I feel that way. I'm just saying I just know the critic mentality. I know what, you know. It's like I've just done this so much. I know what people are gonna look for.
Yeah, they're gonna rag on that, perhaps.
But do you care?
You know what? I'm very sensitive, so maybe I'll care for the day. If I read it, I'll care for that day. But you know what? I did that song specifically. I love that song, and they can say whatever they want to say. But I did it in his key because I feel it was a magical key. And I could have taken it up, and it was more in a key that would have been more, when I got to that point at the end, it would have been more emotional because I would have been reaching for it.
Right.
But I wasn't reaching at all.
Okay.
And so I took it up an octave at the end and tried not to be all over the place with it, but emotionally that's where it was. And it was like pretty much a 1 or 2 take thing. And it was actually at a friend of mine, her father had just passed away, and she was on the phone with me, and she was crying, and she was saying a lot of the things that were being said in that song. She hadn't had much of a relationship with him, and I had to go downstairs and sing that. And so it was like kind of a deep moment. So, I mean, I think that if you listen to the verses, if a critic wants to blindly thrash me, there's ample opportunity with the fact that, yes, I'm singing, you know, a lot of high notes. Yes, I'm belting, and people might say I'm over-singing on certain songs. Eat, Drink, Dance, whatever. Butterfly was a very subtle record that I will always stand by and love. But unfortunately, only 2 singles were released from that album, and it was 7 months apart. And it nearly killed me. That, I mean, you know, you look
and you had no, at this point in your career, you had no control over that?
In my situation, in my scenario within that company, with what had just gone on, think about it. I mean, I'm not going to make a statement, but no.
I mean, but I just...
You can force people to do something.